Hey, Sridhar from WPWZen.com here. Boom is out with the third video in their series on how to, or rather, can it be done with Beaver Builder, in which they show how the pricing table on this page can be done in Beaver Builder. In this screencast, I want to take a look at how the same thing can be done in Oxygen, and I believe it can be done in a much better way. First, I'm going to create a new page. Publish the page and make sure that this page is not inheriting any of the existing templates, and then edit this page with Oxygen. Okay, so let's have a plan of action. We're gonna set this as a section with this light blue or gray background, and we're gonna drop a columns element that has two columns, and in the left column we're gonna use a tabs element, and in the right side column we'll just have a box that has this rounded corners. Okay, so I'm gonna click on add a section, and we're gonna set the height of this section to 100% of the viewport height. So we'll go to size and spacing, and for the height set this to 100 VH. So you can see that by default it has some padding at the top and bottom, left and right. I don't need that, so I'm going to press 0 and apply all to make this all the padding to 0. Okay, so let's set this background color. So I'm going to go back to primary and put that background color, and let's add a columns element. So I'm going to go to add columns, 50-50 for two columns. Okay, and I want this to be centered both horizontally and vertically on this page. So I will go to the parent element and then select center for the horizontal alignment, and for the vertical alignment I would need to go to advanced layout and select center for justify content, so it is vertically centered. Okay, so in the left column I need to add a tabs element. So I'm going to go to add helpers and tabs. So it shows 3 tabs by default, so I'm going to select the right one and get rid of it. And similarly for the tab content, we'll remove that. And for the tab 1, we will change this to monthly, so then this will be yearly. Okay, so let's copy the CSS from the browser inspector and put in the same in Oxygen. So I'm gonna inspect the inactive tab first, and I can see that it has a background color of light gray. So I'm going to make sure that the class is the tab, not the active element. So I'll just select the tab and set the background color to that one, and we'll change the text color to that by going to typography and putting it like that. So the font size is 13 pixels, so let's do that, and it should be capital, so I'm going to set uppercase, and we could probably add some letter spacing of say 2 pixels. Yeah, and we'll also reduce the padding by going to size and spacing and setting this padding to, I don't know, maybe 5. Yeah, I think that looks fine. Okay, so before we proceed any further, I see that The font family is set to Avener Next for the body element. So we could also do the same thing for the text as well as the headings. I think, yeah, headings are also using Avener Next on the site. So since that Avener Next is a paid font, for this video I'm just gonna use a Google font which is close to that, and that is Nunito. I actually did a Google search before. So on this page somebody has listed a few alternatives to that font, and yeah, so you can see Nunito looks pretty close. So I will go to manage and settings, global styles, fonts, and I've already set it to Nunito. Earlier it was something else. Okay, let's go back to structure, and this time I'm going to select the before we proceed further, I can see that it has a box shadow. So let's grab that box shadow. And since this uses two box shadows that are separated by commas, we cannot put that in the oxygen at effects and box shadow. It only accepts one. So what we could do is go back to custom CSS and add it here. Okay. So now let me select the active class, and for the active class that is the text color, and this is the background. Okay. So now I can see that there's a border radius of 4 pixels. So for the left tab div, I would select the ID and go to borders, and at the top left and bottom left I'll set it to 4 pixels, so it will be like that. And similarly for this element I will select the ID and set the radius like that, so we have the rounded corners. Okay. And there is a small label that says save 25% above the right tab, so I can add a new text element which says save 25%, and we can position this above the tab by using absolute positioning, but for that we need the parent to be relative. So we'll go to advanced, layout, and set this to relative, and this for this text we will set it to be absolute, and we'll pull it up by some 15 pixels. Perhaps we need to do more. Okay, so this text is 13 pixels, so I will go back to typography and set the font size and the text color, and we'll get rid of the uppercase. We'll set it to none. So now we can see it's too high, so we'll go back to layout and bring it a little like that. Okay, and we need to make it italic. So when we do that, we will need to adjust the left value. Let's say I'll give it as some 4 pixels. We'll keep increasing. Yep. Okay, cool. Okay, now next thing we'll do is to add this box, the pricing box. So in the tab content, for the first tab, I will add a div, and we'll set this to 100%. Okay, and let's inspect the background for this div. We can see that it's a linear gradient, and it is separated by a comma. This is not something that we can set visually in Oxygen yet, so we'll just add that in the custom CSS. Like that. Okay, and we can see that there's a padding which is 20 on all the sides except at the bottom, which is 64. So I will go there to the size and spacing and set the padding to match that of the site we are trying to model, and it has some rounded corners. So I will go to borders and set this to 10 pixels, and it also has a box shadow, which is here. So I'm gonna go to advanced. Since we need since this box on the right also should have some properties that are similar, like the rounded corners and the box shadow, you can probably create a class and apply the CSS to this class so we can reuse this. Okay, so I'll select pricing box, and for the ID, okay, so we'll remove the 100 width, 100%, and the border radius. We'll keep that because it's just for that div. And yeah, this pattern also will need to put it for the class. Alright, so I'm going to select the class. Okay, so let me now select the ID and set the text color to white. And we'll drag the div and put it inside like so. And we want this text to be horizontally centered. So I'll select the div and set the horizontal item alignment like so. And we'll add a heading which says standard. Move it to the top. So it's 32 pixels. Let's make this H2. I'm going to add some margin like that, and we could add some letter spacing, maybe more. All right. So now we need to add this line, and if I inspect, I can see that it is set for the pseudo element before. Let's give this a class so we can write some custom CSS targeting the class. So I'm going to call it my price heading, and I'm going to select the body element and add a code block and comment out the PHP, and in the CSS we will use the after pseudo selector. I'm not sure why before was used here. I think after makes sense because it is appearing after or below the actual heading. So we'll put in that CSS, and I'll remove px for 0, it's unitless, and for the left I'll set it to 50%. Okay. So we need to add these rules, the transform property, to make sure that the line, which by the way is not appearing, that it should be centered exactly. We need to add that. We need to make this position as relative. There you go. Okay. So let's add some padding at the bottom. Let's say 40 pixels, or say some 30 pixels. Okay. And I'll go back to code block and change this width from 10% to some solid value, I mean in pixels. So if I go here, it's 55. So I'll change this to 55 pixels. Okay. All right, so next thing we need to do is to add the price. So I will change this to 15. And since the dollar sign has to be a smaller size than the number, we need to convert that into a span, and also that number I will convert that into a span. Okay, so for the actual number it should be 48 pixels, and for the dollar it should be 24. Okay, now for the parent, which is this text div, we will set the display to flex. So I'll go to layout and set the display to flex, and I will change the line height of this span to 1, so that both these individual span elements will appear top aligned inside the parent element, like that. Okay, cool. Could probably add some more margin like that. So next thing is this build per month text. So I'm gonna add a new text element, and what should be the 14 pixels. Go to typography and set it to uppercase. No, that's not what I want. What I want to do is set the bottom margin for the entire text div to some 20, like that. Okay, we'll increase the letter spacing a bit, say 2 pixels. And let's go to the parent. Reduce this to, I don't know, 16. Okay. Oh, it's 500. So I'll set this to 500. So next is this unlimited text. So I will add a text element, change that to unlimited, add some gap. Okay, maybe some more. So this should be 28 pixels. 28, 100. Okay. And I'm going to select this text and duplicate it. Change it to licenses. And we need that custom playlists. So I'm going to duplicate this text. Custom playlists. And we'll increase the letter spacing to say 3, like that. Okay, cool. So before we add the button, we need to make sure that the parent, which is this div, has a position of relative, because we're gonna use absolute positioning to put the button like this. So with the div selected, I'm gonna go to advanced. I'll set it for the class. Okay, I'll go to layout and set the position to relative. Okay, so now let me add the class, a button, and this should say select with a white background. And what's the text color? Looks like it's black. Let's set uppercase for the text transform and make it bold. $700. Okay. And we'll increase the letter spacing to some 2 pixels, like that. Yep. That's the color actually. Okay. And let's increase the padding. So at the left it will be, let's say, 40 and 40. Now we need bigger, about 60 and 60. Okay. So let's see the border radius for the button. Where am I? Okay, it's 5 pixels. So I'll go to borders and set the radius to 5 pixels. Okay, so this div as well as the button both have a box shadow. So let's inspect the box shadow for the div, and it is having that color. So I'm gonna go to effects, box shadow, put in the color, and put these values from the site: blur of 27 and spread of 0. Okay, and we'll do the same thing for the button as well. Let me just inspect the button to see it's the same values. Yep, same values. Okay, cool. So with the button selected, I'm gonna go to layout, set it to be absolute with the left value, no, with the top as rather bottom as 0. So we'll make it -10. Just keep changing until it comes to the middle. Yep. We could give it some little padding at the top and bottom. So let's say 15 and 15. Maybe that's too much. 14, 15. Yeah, probably a little left and right padding. Okay, cool. So when we put the mouse on the button, you can see that the shadow is changing. So let's see what that value is. Yes, okay. So with the button selected, I'm going to go to state, hover, and go to effects, box shadow, and put in these new values. Like that. Okay. So let's just step back and take a look at the bigger picture. You can see that this entire thing is centered horizontally, whereas what we have is at the left. So in the left div, we should have everything to be centered horizontally. So let's select that. And I would want to have the same thing on the right as well. So let's do that. Okay. So what happens when we add a columns element in Oxygen is that the inner divs will automatically get 20 pixels of padding on all the sides. So I'm going to go to advanced and get rid of this like that, but only keep it on the right side. And for the right div, remove it on these 3 sides. Okay. Okay. I can see that this tab content also has some padding on all the 4 sides. So I will go to advanced and size and spacing and get rid of them except at the top. Okay, cool. So what we have done is we have created the monthly part, the tab content. We need to duplicate this and change this text for the yearly tab. So I'm going to select the div and duplicate it, and I'm going to move it inside the second tab content. So now when I click on the second tab, it should show that. So we can delete this text. So here I need to change this 15 to 135 and this month to year. Everything else remains the same. So this is monthly and this is yearly. Of course, you could also select the button and change the links if that is something you want to do or you need to do. So let's save it. And take a look at the front end. Okay, looks good. So on the right side, what we want is a box that has this text. So in the right side div, well, the div is already present, so what I could do is just give it the same class as what I've given for this, which is the pricing box. So let me add the class of pricing box here and see. So the moment I do that, you can see that it has got the rounded corners and also the box shadow. And let's give this a white background, but I need to do it for the individual, the ID, but not the class. Okay, so let's add that heading. So I'm gonna select that and duplicate and move it there. I wonder what happened to the padding. So for this one, there should be a padding, is it not? So why is it not getting applied here? I think it's because this individual ID has the padding values and we need to remove that. So I will go to size and spacing. Oh, it's actually set to 0. Okay, cool. So this should say Pro, and it should be in capital letters like that, and the text color should be that pink. Okay, so we need these three text. So I could probably select licenses and duplicate that and move it here and change it to enterprise plans and duplicate it a couple of times. This one is custom increments. Okay, and let's add this button that says learn more. So I'm gonna select that button and duplicate that and it here. Okay, so that should say learn more. Okay, so let's get the background color for that button, and it is here. What we'll do is we'll go to advanced and custom CSS and put in the background like that. Change the text color to white. Okay, cool. And we could probably reduce the width of this button by changing this to some, say, 50, 50, or how about 40, 40? Yeah, that looks fine. Okay, so what we want is to have this left content and the right content have the same horizontal vertical level, that is vertically centered. So if I take a look at the structure, so this element has left div and right div, and so I'm going to select that, go to advanced layout, and I will select the align items to center. Okay, now for this div we need to give some padding at the bottom. So I will go to size and spacing, and for the padding at the bottom, let's say, I don't know, how about 100? That's too much. So 60. Yep, that's fine. Okay, so let's save it and take a look at the front end. So we have the tabs and we have the absolutely positioned text here, and we have the buttons with the box shadow, and also the boxes have the box shadows, and everything is centered in the container, and this container has 100% of the viewport height. All right, I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.